la lune qui danse, une lumière si lente.
Greetings! Retro Zoltan here. Well, now that I've had my hands on a bunch of simple and crazy handheld units, I thought I would challenge myself with something more complicated. Raster, a follower of the channel and a good friend, has generously donated a GPD Win 1 to the channel for review. I've had it for a while now, and after a lot of prodding, I think it's finally time to take a look at this thing. I admit I've been hesitant, just like the first time I looked at my first Android handheld gaming system. What's worse is, in my experience, a Windows-based anything would seem like more trouble than it's worth. I started to ask questions. How can I play games on this thing? How do I install my own emulators, drivers? Can something run on this other than Windows? My uncertainty led to procrastination, so here we are. So is the Gamepad Digital Win 1 the first handheld Windows running device? Well, no, not really. While I believed it was at first, that honor technically goes to the HP Jornada, which ran Windows CE, a version of Windows designed for personal digital assistants. While it could play games, it really wasn't the device's intended purpose. The GPD Win, however, was clearly built as a gaming device. So this makes the GPD Win, in my view, the true grandfather of Windows-based handheld gaming.
Look, lady, get off my back. I'm an old man.
The first generation GPD Win was released in October 2016 and came with a watered-down version of Windows 10 Home. Normally I would unbox this, but since I got it used, I can't give too much about the opening experience. Other than a copy of the original instructions I managed to dig off of a questionable site that Raster gave me. This pretty much helps me with what I want to know, especially if I end up borking my system, which I'm sure I'll do eventually. The GPD Win came as you see it now in an original Indiegogo price of around $300, later moving to $500, then sinking back down to $300 once more after some time. Assuming probably as GPD started pumping out more versions, this drove the price down. As you can see, this is a clamshell design, perfect for something like this. Perfect for portability. It's kind of funny for me to be looking at this thing right now because clamshell handhelds are very much in right now. Well, that's mostly true. Maybe we're at the tail end of that. The D-pad doesn't feel too bad, honestly. It rotates and pivots smoothly. I wish it was a little bigger, but they had to make room for analog sticks that are inset deep to keep it from touching the screen when this thing is closed. They have good movement, but they don't click down as extra buttons. Can't have everything, I guess. I would say these analog sticks look a lot like the PSP Vita, but jury's still out if they're going to feel like that, and thank goodness no slider control. The ABXY buttons are labeled and colored, a huge preference of mine, that don't feel too bad when pressing them. They're also small, of course, but again, not too much can be done here. They're positioned well, and just holding this device and putting my thumb on them is an easy, comfortable reach I'm not upset about. There's also a switch on the top that allows you to change a few things. There is a mouse mode which makes the right analog stick act as a mouse, while the shoulder buttons are the mouse buttons. There's also a joystick mode, which is full gamepad functionality, and direct interface mode, which allows the use of a USB controller. The screen, of course, is pretty small by today's standards, at a whopping 5.5 inches at 720p. Something I didn't realize until recently was that it was also a touchscreen, so I look forward to playing with that also. Also on the front, obviously, is a full QWERTY keyboard. It looks impressive enough and has everything that I would possibly need for the most part. I believe the Xbox button brings about an Xbox overlay or loads up Steam, but I haven't gotten that far yet. You won't be typing up a novel on this bad boy, but it's certainly something I'm interested in for computer emulation. Nothing more frustrating than being told to press Z for a game on a handheld system with no keyboard. One of my concerns from one of the followers of the channel, Lapakis, is that gaming is going to be awkward when you're worried about your hands constantly hitting the keyboard, which is a valid concern of mine as well. Just pretending to play it at the moment, it doesn't seem too bad for my hands, but jury's still out until gameplay. On the top, of course, is the trigger and shoulder buttons that are loose. Too loose. They aren't going anywhere, but damn, they're wobbly and weird. These feel like an afterthought. I don't think these are going to get stuck anytime soon, but I can see it being a strange experience when playing some games that need them. Also on the top is an audio jack, a USB 3 jack, an SD slot, an HDMI out, and a USB-C charging port. What more do you need, honestly? The back of our GPD is the fan switch, which usually has on, medium, and full speed. This was broken when Raster purchased it used, and before sending it to me, he did a little work on the inside to have it on full all the time. It's not too loud in my opinion, so not a huge bother, and it's better than just letting this thing fry itself. As far as I can tell, the bottom is a vent and a microphone, and on the sides are right and left speakers. Here are some stats for you people that like this sort of thing. The display is a 5.5-inch, 128 by 720 resolution. The CPU is an Intel Atom X7 Z8 700, and later they made it with the Z8 750. The memory is 4 gigs of RAM. The power is a 6900 milliamp hour battery that lasts about 5 hours, and it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Booting up the Win 1 is just like booting up any other Windows PC. And while you wait, it's loading its drivers and other things. Kind of blows my mind to see something so small running Windows. This is something I've always wanted, and I was totally blind to the fact that this existed for so long already. Okay, so it's running Windows. Now what? I don't think I'll be charting out my finances in Excel, but if I wanted to, technically I could. Since this is a classic gaming YouTube channel, let's play some classic PC games. With that said, I installed GOG and Steam to see how far we can take this thing. With the internal hard drive at only 64 gigs, however, we're probably going to need a little more space here. This can be done with the SD card or adding a USB stick. I read somewhere that the USB is much faster than the SD card, so I'm going to go ahead and use this as my external hard drive. So my initial test went well. I was playing games I haven't touched in years. Listening to the guards having small talk while you're sneaking up on them was a cherished memory I never thought I'd see again. But here I was, easily playing Thief Gold again, and it worked fine.
Oh, the blood, it just turns my poor tummy. Shut up, you taffer.
As long as you turned off hardware video acceleration, which is something you don't realize right off the bat. I certainly didn't. Surely we're dealing with a mini computer here. But of course, not every PC game is going to work on this thing. It's an 8-year-old mini computer that will only handle older stuff, which is pretty fair. I would have to say playing older games on this thing was pretty fun, and I found a bunch of videos of people playing all sorts of things on here. Even the original World of Warcraft, which I didn't even consider. The more graphic-intensive games, for the most part, worked, but they were clearly struggling. What's worse is it would drain the battery quickly, to where the system would just shut off without explanation.
What did you do? Turned off the wall. I must have pressed the wrong button. Well, put it back on. Put the movie back on. Yes, sir.
This was pretty frustrating, but once I figured out what was happening, I just kept it plugged in for testing. It's clear this thing needs a new battery. Controls for the most part are a bit difficult, especially if you're used to using a mouse to do everything. Still, everything is fully configurable as you expect, and using your own controller, which is something you can do, will need to be configured anyway also. Aside from installing PC games, you can obviously load up emulators and have your hand at running your favorites just like you would if you ran them on the PC. Honestly, I haven't toyed with PC emulation in years, but emulators such as MAME and others are going to work as you expect. It's a bit more work than having a front end look at everything, but it's an option if you're looking for it. So what else can this do? Raster went ahead and installed Batocera on this thing, and it works, even though it's not supposed to. The Batocera team tells me so, and not only is it not supported, people are reporting you just get a black screen. Not with mine, which just goes to show how good Raster is. Or perhaps I'm lucky. No, it was Raster. If I can figure out what he did, and this is something you're interested in, look in the description below for all the details. Okay, let's dig in. Booting up is the usual affair, and just like any other handheld system, I didn't have much trouble loading games onto the system. Well, kind of. I'm not sure if it's completely broken or because it's not supported on the Win 1, but I could not get the SD card to work on this thing. It was easy to connect it to a USB cable to a computer, however, and it's using its internal drive, but it's only 64 gig. So eventually that's going to be a problem. It does have a USB port though, so will an external USB storage work instead? Nope, not a chance. In fact, just leaving a formatted USB stick in on a reboot causes Batocera to do some weird things. Batocera, if you've never seen it before, breaks out systems depending on what ROMs you have. There are about 200 systems to pick from, so you'll be hard-pressed to find one you can emulate using this OS. So how is the emulation on the GPD Win 1? For this video, I've uploaded ROMs for several systems, including MAME Arcade, Atari 2600, Atari Jaguar, ColecoVision, PC Engine, Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, PlayStation 64, Nintendo GameCube, Game Boy Advance, Nintendo DS, and Sega Mega Drive. I also added Sega Game Gear, Sega Saturn, Neo Geo CD, PlayStation, PlayStation 2, PSP, and of course Dreamcast. Since it had a keyboard, I found it only fair to try out computer emulation as well. so I added Commodore 64 and ZX Spectrum. Ports are also available if you're missing your PC games, so there's that too. Playing games on the Win 1 using Batocera is mixed. Earlier systems worked well, no problems that I could find for sure. Game Boy Advance games look great, and I was really impressed with how well they looked on the screen. Even DS games don't look too bad. Once I hit Nintendo 64, GameCube, and PSP, they were playable, but I could tell the system was starting to struggle. With some tweaking, I'm sure these can be helped, but I was still impressed in how I was playing these games anyway. PlayStation 2 and Sega Saturn loaded up, but in the end were pretty much unplayable. I've heard some of the more taxing emulations cause the system to heat up pretty good, so in my situation it's probably best I have the fan on full blast during these times. Computer emulation, something I was pretty excited about, works pretty good too, for the most part. Games that need joysticks usually need some sort of configuration, while others just assume you have a joystick connected, and it may or may not work. D-pad controls work great, and I really had no issues, while using the analog stick was more troublesome than I expected. Not sure if it was me, but the analog stick inset felt restricted when playing most of the time. Even though the analog stick has a grippy rubber on it, my fingers still slipped when I was expecting the stick to move more than it could. It's not a deal breaker, but something I certainly noticed right away. My concern for hitting the keyboard while playing wasn't an issue like I thought it would be, since the way I hold it for the most part is away from the keyboard. It may be because I have big hands, but either way, I take it most emulators wouldn't care if you were pushing the keyboard anyway, and ignore you for the most part. Battery life on this thing was not the strongest. Even though they boast about 5 hours, I've read that these devices can easily be overcharged, which wears down the battery considerably. Considering this is about 8 years old now, its use is about 1.5 hours in the best circumstances for me, which means I'll probably be in the market for a new battery soon. When you get into the GPD Win 1, you quickly realize it's more than just a handheld. It's a community project. A lot of users treated this thing like a classic car, consistently tinkering with it to fix its weaknesses and make it their own. This whole vibe is perfectly captured by Joshi Kona, who told me he regrets selling his after making modifications. Joshi kind of inspired me, but which do I do first? So what do I think of the GPD Win 1? At first I loved it, but as I played around a bit, now I have mixed feelings. If Batocera was supported and worked better, I would probably like it a lot more. It's the higher, more graphical games that, of course, bring this thing down. Either way, I feel in general people will feel the same and start forging ahead to get a better hardware version, or better yet, just get a Steam Deck that can handle much more than this thing can for a similar price. Keep in mind this was created before the Steam Deck, so the need was there, but now not so much. It's a tinker's dream, honestly, and an older one. But if you're into PC emulation, it's not a bad way to get started if you can pick one up pretty cheap. If you have one already, I would be curious if you even use it, and how, and of course if you've made modifications. And that's all I have to say about the GPD Win 1. It's a pleasure to have this one in my collection, and personally I'm going to put Batocera back on it and pack this thing full of classic computer emulation, because, well, it's something most of my handhelds can't do. Thank you so much for watching, thank you so much Raster for your contribution, and as always, I'll see you next time. Bye.
One night in the arcade when all was calm, so